Imagine a vast, wind-scarred plain stretching endlessly toward a leaden horizon where the only sound is the whisper of dry grass and the weight of centuries pressing silently down. Beneath this ancient steppe, hidden from the sun for over 2 millennia, there lies a secret that refuses to be unearthed, the forgotten gold of a people who rode like ghosts and vanished just as swiftly. They were the Scythians, masterful nomadic warriors whose very name once struck fear into the hearts of settled empires. Yet they left no great cities or written scrolls behind. What they did leave was a glittering trail of exquisite treasure, a golden enigma buried with their dead in earthen mounds called kurgans, scattered like silent sentinels across the Eurasian landscape. You might think that after centuries of excavation, we would have recovered the full measure of their wealth, but the earth is a jealous keeper of secrets. To this day, countless kurgans remain untouched, their chambers sealed against time, holding golden relics that the modern world may never see. The story begins not with a discovery, but with a feeling, the unnerving sensation that beneath your feet, the soil itself is heavy with lost magnificence. Picture the first glimpse of Scythian gold emerging from the black earth, a flash of luminous yellow catching the forensic light of a lonely excavation tent. It was not just any gold. It was a menagerie of snarling panthers, coiled griffins, and stags in mid-leap, crafted with a ferocious vitality that seemed to defy the long silence of their makers. These were not simple ornaments. They were the skin of a culture, hammered and formed into objects of incredible power, forever capturing the pulse of a wild existence. Our journey into the labyrinths of the lost Scythian gold begins in the lonely kurgan fields of the Pontic steppe, where the fog of time rolls in as thick as the silence of a tomb. Historians had long read the terrified accounts of Greek chroniclers like Herodotus, who wrote of savage, scalp-taking horsemen who drank from the gilded skulls of their enemies. For centuries, these tales were dismissed as the fabrications of terrified merchants until the ice-cold fingers of a Siberian winter yielded a startling truth in the permafrost, far to the east. In the mid-20th century, Soviet archaeologists in the Altai Mountains began to pry open massive stone-covered mounds, and what they found was a civilization preserved not just in gold, but in ice. Deep within these frozen tombs, the chill had arrested decay so completely that the dead still bore elaborate tattoos of mythical creatures inked across their frozen skin. The bodies were surrounded by their worldly possessions: meticulously carved wooden shields, felt tapestries depicting epic tales, and a staggering array of golden plaques sewn onto their burial shrouds. One particular kurgan revealed a chieftain draped in a golden pectoral weighing over a kilogram, its surface a miniature universe of sculpted figures locked in an eternal, silent struggle. This was the physical evidence that transformed Scythian myth into tangible reality, yet it only deepened the core mystery by raising a single unsettling question. Where did all this gold come from? And how did a nomadic people, constantly on the move with their wagons and herds, develop the technical mastery to create these divine objects? Mainstream archaeology points to rich ore deposits in the Altai and Ural Mountains, suggesting the Scythians controlled crucial nodes of the ancient trade routes that fed the world's hunger for precious metals. You can almost see the distant campfires where craftsmen poured molten metal into lost wax molds, creating solid gold belt buckles that depicted scenes of a hero slaying a monstrous beast. The theory is neat and logical, a story of resource control and artistic evolution, yet it feels strangely insufficient when you stare into the hollow, knowing eyes of a golden deer. Some researchers theorize that the gold was not merely a symbol of earthly wealth, but a divine substance imbued with solar power, a sacred metal linking the dead chieftain to an immortal sky god. This would explain the obsessive presence of the sun, wings, and predatory animals in their art, a celestial bestiary designed to carry the soul beyond the dark of the burial chamber. The rational and the numinous collide in the kurgan, where the cold facts of archaeology meet the transcendent ambition of a culture that poured its soul into permanent, shining forms. Yet, where the logical progression of academic study falters, a darker labyrinth of plunder and obsession begins. Long before any scientific expedition, the kurgans were a magnet for grave robbers, nomadic looters who tore through these sacred mounds like silent shadows, scattering treasure to the four winds. The most chillingly symbolic object of this era of theft is the ceremonial golden vessel from the Kul-Oba kurgan, a piece that survived only because the robbers' tunnel collapsed on them mid-heist. The vessel depicts a Scythian warrior pulling back his bowstring, a moment of frozen tension that now stands as a metaphor for the entire mystery. So much was taken, and so much more remains buried in unmarked graves. Peter the Great himself became obsessed with the frozen tombs of Siberia, issuing a decree that any such finds must be systematically collected, a first violent step toward modern conservation. His treasure hunters stripped the kurgans of their golden eyelids and hollow phials of ancient perfume, but their crude methods destroyed more evidence than they ever preserved. Where these early treasure hunters failed to dig, a far more formidable guardian took over, the sheer, unyielding vastness of the Eurasian steppe itself. Thousands of kurgans still swell the landscape from the Black Sea to the borders of Mongolia, their grassy contours blending seamlessly into the rolling plains, invisible to the untrained eye. A dusty satellite map offers a sobering vision. Each tiny bump represents a potential chamber choked with sediment, a pocket of ancient air that has not been breathed in 2,500 years. Technology now offers a glimpse into this underworld without disturbing the soil, revealing dense metallic anomalies deep within unopened mounds, ghosts of a horde that offers no physical access. The labyrinth deepens the moment we attempt to reconcile these vast hidden riches with one glaring absence: a permanent Scythian settlement, a temple complex, or a royal treasury. If a society produces tons of gold, it must have a secure, stationary place where the tribe's collective wealth is stored, refined, and guarded. But we have found no Scythian palace of gold. A bold hypothesis suggests the entire golden treasury we seek was never lost because it was never built. Instead, it was ritually returned to the earth with every dead king, a distributed, sacred economy of the grave. He wrote that when a Scythian king died, his body was covered in wax golden plates, and his intestines were filled with sweet herbs before being carried in a wagon across the entire realm. You must picture the somber procession, a cortege of grieving warriors slicing off pieces of their own ears and hair, wailing into the wind as they brought their monarch to a distant, secret burial ground. At this sacred location, they buried the king with his weapons, his golden cups, and one of his strangled concubines, creating a chamber of pure, concentrated power. But the ceremony did not end there. A year later, 50 of the king's finest bodyguards were strangled and mounted, their corpses stuffed and propped onto sacrificed horses, forming a ghostly cavalry around the mound. This ghastly ring of mounted dead, frozen in eternal vigil, encircled the hidden gold, making the kurgan not just a tomb, but a forbidden, horrifying necropolis guarded by the silenced elite. If this account holds any truth, then the true lost gold is not a single missing treasure chest, but an entire landscape of death, a hidden geography of massive, untouched burial complexes. The logical mind reels at the scale, for where one kurgan is found, a dozen more might lie hidden beneath ancient landslides or overgrown forests, demanding a search on a continental scale. Local whispers in the Altai region have long held that a Valley of the Dead exists, a cursed place where the ghosts of the Gold Guardians still ride through the mist on nights when the moon is thick and low. Rationality dismisses these as campfire tales. But the archaeological record from the famous Arjun II complex proves that such enormous sacrificial royal burials were not myth but terrifying reality. Arjun II yielded a staggering 16,000 individual gold objects from a single burial, the undisturbed resting place of a king and queen whose identities still refuse to be known. The sheer volume of gold from this one mound drove a spike of obsession through the heart of modern scholarship, for if Arjun II was so rich, what unimaginable trove might another, even larger kurgan conceal? Where the physical labyrinth ends, the psychological maze consumes the human soul, dragging some of the world's most brilliant minds into a feverish hunt for the ultimate golden kurgan. The human element of this mystery is a gallery of haunted faces. Soviet archaeologists who devoted their lives to digging in permafrost, dying of lung disease in pursuit of a frozen king. There are the rogue metal detectorists who vanish into the steppe for weeks, their battered jeeps returning loaded with earth-caked golden tiles, pried from the grip of a royal corpse. A darker hypothesis suggests that some of the most intricate golden plaques in museum basements are forgeries, created by modern master goldsmiths using ancient methods to fool the experts and feed the black market. You can feel the paranoia creeping into the research, a chilling realization that the objects we are using to understand a lost culture might be elaborate lies cast in fresh, shiny metal. Consider the psychological toll on an archaeologist who spends decades excavating a kurgan, only to discover the main chamber was emptied in antiquity, a phantom pain where a king's ransom should have been. They sift through the disturbed soil, finding not a defeated skeleton, but a single overlooked golden earring, a mocking whisper from a grave robber who missed the most personal, intimate object of all. The obsession is not limited to humans of the steppe. In the museums of St. Petersburg, curators battle the inexorable decay of gold, untouched for millennia, a slow, silent corrosion that eats at the edges of their charge. A golden sheath for a warrior's goritos, a combined bow case and quiver still bears the microscopic residue of ancient leather, a sensory connection to the past that modern science can preserve but never fully revive. Each artifact is therefore a double-edged sword, offering a glimpse of divine artistry while simultaneously reminding us that the culture that birthed it is irreparably gone, dead and entombed in our sterile glass boxes. The Scythians rode away from history as abruptly as they had galloped into it, melting into the vast genetic soup of migration, leaving only their gold and their frost-bitten corpses as proof they ever existed. As you stand in the dimly lit hermitage vault, the gold watches you back, its reflective surface a deep, liquid pool that seems to hold the last reflection of a long-gone warrior. The toll is not just academic, it is existential. A confrontation with the terrifying fragility of human memory in the face of a universe that erases whole civilizations with the silent indifference of a sandstorm. Those who dedicate their lives to this search often speak of dreams, nightmares where they find the ultimate kurgan, only to wake before they can open the inner chamber. grasping at fading visions of pure, impossible gold. The curse of the Scythian gold is not a supernatural hex, but a deeper affliction, the incurable desire to find something that may be, by its very nature, always one mound away. We hunt for a lost treasury, but perhaps we are really hunting for a lost piece of ourselves, a nomadic freedom that our sedentary, digital existence has utterly abandoned. The endless sky of the steppe offers a philosophical mirror, a tangible echo of the infinity that confronts anyone who dares to ask where the rest of the gold lies. The stars wheel overhead with the same chilled indifference they showed when Scythian priests read the heavens, searching for the divine machinery of the cosmos in the glint of a gold mirror. We have mapped the human genome, peered into the heart of atoms, and sent machines to the surface of Mars. Yet a patch of grass on an anonymous hill in Kazakhstan may still hold a secret beyond our grasp. The enduring enigma is not whether we will ever find more Scythian gold, but whether the act of finding it will finally satisfy the deep ancestral hunger that drives the search. What happens, one must ask, on the day when the last kurgan is opened, the last frozen chieftain is lifted from his ice casket, and the last golden plaque is catalogued and photographed? Will our species feel a profound sense of completion, or will we experience a silent, terrifying grief for the mystery that has finally died, leaving us alone with nothing but cold data? There is a wisdom in the silence of the unopened mound, a philosophical reserve that argues the real treasure is the invisible tension between the known and the unknowable. We tell stories around the campfire of lost legions and sunken galleons, but the Scythian mystery is more subtle. It hides in plain sight. Under wheat fields and grazing cattle, a sleeping dragon of wealth in a landscape of monotony. The artifacts that have been recovered have rewritten history books a dozen times over, shattering the old, comfortable narrative of nomadic barbarism and replacing it with a complex, frighteningly artistic civilization. But for all that rewriting, the Scythians remain a phantom. Their faces reconstructed from skulls and plaster, their voices a total, devastating void that no golden object can ever truly fill. Stand at the edge of a kurgan and listen to the wind. The grass hisses as it bends, and for a fleeting, irrational moment, it sounds like the whisper of an ancient prayer caught in a cycle of unending return. The gold, in its patient endurance, becomes a clock without hands, marking not the passage of days, but the slow geological breathing of a world that covers all things with earth and roots and forgetfulness. We must consider that the final, most profound secret of the Scythian gold is not its location, but the silent testimony it offers about the relationship between art, death, and permanence. These nomads, living in felt tents that were carried on ox carts, chose to pour their collective genius into the one medium that endures, metal so heavy it sinks into the earth, never to wander again. It is the ultimate act of territorial ambition for a people without territory, a way of claiming the steppe forever by seeding it with impossible, shining treasure that anchors the soul to a place. Generations of historians have tried to trap the Scythians in a neat chronological box, pinning them to a century and a list of battles. But the gold defies this domestication. Each piece is a violent, beautiful scream against the void, a refusal to dissolve into the anonymity of prehistory. And we are the unwilling listeners to that scream, echoing across the millennia. As night falls over the vast steppe, a shroud of darkness covers the unexcavated mounds, erasing their contours and turning the landscape into a flat, featureless blackboard of possibility. In that absolute dark, the distinction between past and present dissolves, and you can sense the ancient guardians, still on their phantom horses, the gold still glowing dimly in its subterranean prison. The lost gold of the Scythians is not a riddle to be solved with a shovel or a radar scan. It is a state of mind, a permanent unmooring of certainty in the face of a secret the earth will keep, perhaps forever. The theories will continue to multiply. A hidden valley, a merchant's hoard buried hastily in a sandstorm, a sacred lake whose bottom is paved with golden tribute thrown to placate a water deity. But the fog of the steppe will not be parted by theory. It only thickens with each passing year, drawn up from the frozen ground to obscure the precise hills and secret valleys where the rest slumbers. This is the quiet, ponderous terror of the historian. The knowledge that the complete picture will never be assembled, that the museum's collection is but a shattered mirror reflecting a fragmented God. So the enigma remains, not as a failure of our intellect, but as a magnificent, humbling feature of a universe that will always hoard a portion of its beauty and horror beyond our reach. The lost gold of the Scythians endures in the precise place where curiosity meets silence, a golden thread pulled from the hem of eternity, leading us not to a tidy conclusion, but to the edge of an unending, whispering darkness.